Assalamu alaikum, my dear students. This is Shaila Akhtar, Assistant Professor English. Today I am here with a class for the students of Honours First Year. The topic of our today's class is Pike, a poem by Ted Hughes. This very poem, Pike, is included to our first year course, Introduction to Poetry. So at the very beginning of our class, let's get introduced to Ted Hughes, the poet. Here we have our poet Ted Hughes, and Ted Hughes is the by name of Edward James Hughes. Ted Hughes, the poet laureate of the United Kingdom. He was born on 17 August 1930 at Mithelmroyd in the West Riding of Yorkshire to William Henry and Edith Hughes, and raised among the local farms of the Calder Valley and on the Pennymoorland. He was an English poet, translator, and children's writer. He became poet laureate in 1984 and held the office until his death. In 2008, the Times ranked Hughes as the fourth on their list of the 50 greatest British writers since 1945. Ted Hughes loved hunting and fishing, swimming and picnicking with his family. Teachers Miss MacLeod and Pauline Main introduced him to the poets Hopkins and Eliot. In 1946, one of the early poems of Ted Hughes, Wild West, and a short story were published in the grammar school magazine named as The Dawn and Dern. By the age of 16, he had no other thought than being a poet. During his 2 years national service from 1949 to 1951, he learned many of the Shakespeare's plays by heart and memorized great quantities of W.B. Yeats's poetry. Hughes was married to the American poet Sylvia Plath from 1956 until her death by suicide in 1963 at the age of 30. Some admirers of Plath and critics blamed Hughes for her death after the revelation of letters written by Plath. The last poetic work of Ted Hughes, Birthday Letters, explored their relationships. That means the relationship in between the husband and wife. During 1948, Hughes owned an open exhibition in English at Pembroke College, Cambridge, but chose to do his national service first. After completion of his 2 years of national service, in 1951 he started studying English at Pembroke College. In his 3rd year, he transferred to anthropology and archaeology. After university, living in London and Cambridge, Hughes went on to have many jobs, including working as a rose gardener, a night watchman, and a reader for the British film company J. Arthur Rank. Ted Hughes worked at London Zoo as a washer-upper. a post that offered plentiful opportunities to observe animals at close quarters. In September 1957, he won Somerset Maugham Award. While in London, they were both writing, that means Ted Hughes and Sylvia Plath. Hughes working on programs for BBC, and he was producing essays, articles, reviews and talks. In 1961, Plath accuses Hughes for physically abusing her months before she miscarried their second child. Ted Hughes' first collection of poetry, The Hawk in the Rain, was published in 1957. In 1959, he won Galbraith Prize. The most significant work of Ted Hughes was Crow, and it was published in 1970. Hughes worked for 10 years on a prose poem named as Got It, and it was published in 1977. Most successful children's book written by Ted Hughes was The Iron Man, and later it became the animated film named as The Iron Giant. Tales from Ovid won Whitbread Book of the Year Award in 1998. After the death of Ted Hughes, his birthday letters won Whitbread Prize in 1999. This poet laureate of United Kingdom, Ted Hughes, died on 28 October 1998 in London, England. Pike, the title of our today's poem. Ted Hughes, the writer, is known for his use of cynicism and brutality of animal life. In this poem, Pike is depicted as an animal born, though pike is a kind of fish. It has instincts to kill and destruct. The poet allegorically implies that every human has got such nature. Human being becomes destructive and ferocious when he wants to achieve something over other. The poem Pike is published in his second collection of poetry, which exalted his reputation as a major poet of America. This very poem is divided into three parts. The first part deals with his admiration for the pike, comes in the beginning of the poem, where the poet describes the size and color of the pike with its grandeur by nature. Then he keeps on admiring the beauty and the presence of the fish in the water. He gives a visual imagery of how it lives in its natural habitat. The second part of this poem is about his reminiscence of childhood, where the poet visited the lake frequently and his experience of the three fishes the poet and his friends grew at home. That experience gave him the lesson that the strong ones survive in the world, whereas the weaker one must succumb to their fate of being eaten by the stronger one. In the third part, the poet shows his respect and fear for the fish, the frightening eyes and malevolent grin still haunting him at night throughout his lifetime. This poem gives us reference to D.H. Lawrence's poem Mosquito. The mosquito does its work it is created for. It makes man dread, though they are very smaller in size. The contrast here is that mosquito disgusts, whereas Pike depicts his admiration. Pike is a poem of 40 lines which consists of 10 stanzas written in quatrains, and this poem can be divided into three parts, where part 1 the poet's admiration and description of the pike, and part 2 here the poet expresses his experiences with pikes, and part 3 expresses the poet's fishing experience in the pond. In the last two stanzas, the poet tells about how his fear of pike grew along with him from childhood to adulthood. Here we have the details of the experience of his fishing at night in the pond. As the darkness of the night unfolds, the darkness beneath is freed. That means, with the advancement of darkness of night, the pike underwater is freed with its dreadful appearance and frightens the poet. It raises, keeping its eyes fixed on the poet. It means here the pike, the fish. So here the writer actually wants to tell us about the circumstances, and suitable circumstances can influence man or trigger the instinct to commit a crime. In the poem Pike, here we have a metaphorical use of inland. Inland is used as a metaphor to describe the depth of the pond. The poet indirectly implies that, like the pond, inland also has its own depth, which is unknown to many. It can also be considered as a satire on England for keeping many people who are violent by nature and walks in the city of England with killer instincts, or people who are ready to grow bigger at the cost of the fellow human being. This can also be considered as a hyperbole, as it is a poem of reminiscence. Themes in the poem Pike. The three themes are presented here. The first one is beauty and brutality of nature. The second one is reminiscence of the childhood of the poet, and the inborn instincts of human nature. Pike is beautiful by nature but meant to kill for its survival, and the poet's childhood experience of seeing a fish, pike, to kill another develops a negative impact, and the inborn killer instinct of human being comes with every individual. Pike is beautiful, but at the same time it is a killer, which is brutal fate of it. From growing the pike in a glass jar, and the dreadful experience of seeing a pike killing another gives a overview to the poet's experience with pike, and the impact of it becomes negative throughout his life. Inborn killer instinct of the pike is an implication on the natural human instincts, comes with every individual, even if they do not ask for it. It is inborn, that means it is God gifted, according to the poet. The structure of the poem Pike. The poem is written in 44 lines. It is divided into 11 quatrains. It doesn't follow any particular rhyme scheme. The first letter of all the lines are capitalized purposefully to give the magnificent appeal to the pike. The lines end in the middle in many places. So this is the structure of the poem, and this very poem, Pikes, actually tells about the survival of the fittest with animal instinct. And allegorically, the poem Pike actually reveals the human nature with animal instincts. Though the poet himself followed the same rule and became a survival throughout his life. So here ends our today's discussion on the poem Pike. Very soon we will meet again with another class. Till then, stay home, stay safe. Thank you.